After spending many decades of what is now Iraq and Iran, Cyrus the Great, ruler of the Achaemenid dynasty of Media and Persia, allowed the Judeans to return to their homeland and rebuild their city of Jerusalem as well as their temple. This phase of Jewish history is called Second Temple Judaism, which spans from the return of the Judean exiles to the destruction of the Second Temple by the Romans, which is being covered in the main series. Overlapping with this era of Jewish history during the Second Temple is another period called the Hellenistic era. The term Hellenistic refers to areas, particularly in the Near East, influenced by Greek culture following the vast conquest of Alexander the Great, with the root Hellas meaning Greece in Greek. During this age, Judea became a hotly contested area between the generals who succeeded Alexander the Great, known as the Diadochi, and their respective kingdoms, consisting of remnants of Alexander's empire. Namely, states such as the Seleucid Empire of Syria and Persia, and the Ptolemaic Empire of Egypt, fought for control of this piece of land which rested on both of their borders. Judea, in effect, became the no man's land of both empires. In the mid-3rd century, one of the most lasting byproducts of Hellenization was coming into formation: the Septuagint. The Septuagint is a Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. The name itself comes from the process by which it was translated, in that about 72 Jewish scholars in Alexandria, the Ptolemaic capital of Egypt, founded by and named after Alexander the Great, completed this translation in 70 days. This Greek translation would have a profound impact on the ancient world, since now many non-Jews and Hellenized Jews could access and understand Judaic scriptures. Many early Christians would likewise use this translation for liturgical and evangelistic purposes. Aside from military clashes, there were also cultural wars being waged in Judea. Since the Seleucid Syrian takeover of Judea, the Jews of this land were being forced to Hellenize, that is, to adopt more Greek culture, traditions, activities, religious practices, and ideology. Many Judeans assimilated to the dominant culture to varying levels. For instance, in order to participate in the gymnasium, a male had to be naked, which was a violation of the Jewish law against public nudity. However, in order to move up in a Hellenistic world and be viewed as cultured, interacting with movers and shakers in the gymnasium was paramount. In essence, no nudity, no upward mobility. Under the Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes, the more conservative Jews pushed back against what was seen as a dismantling of their ethno-religious traditions. The king responded by doubling down on Hellenization, by banning circumcision as well as the observation of the Sabbath. Antiochus even erected a statue of Zeus in the temple itself, followed by sacrificing pigs on the altar. He likewise set up other pagan shrines in various Judean cities, as well as executing or enslaving those who kept Jewish religious practices. These repressions, enforced conformity to Greek culture, did not go over well, to say the least, with the Jewish population, with both conservative and even Hellenized Jews forming bands of resistance. One Jewish priest, named Mattathias, and his 5 sons initially led a guerrilla war against the Seleucids. After some success, these skirmishes turned into a full-scale war between Greco-Syrian troops of the Seleucid Empire and Jewish nationalists and reactionaries led by the family of Mattathias, who were eventually called the Maccabees, meaning hammer. Judah Maccabee, one of the sons of Mattathias after the latter's death, became a renowned general and even defeated Antiochus Epiphanes' armies. Once Jerusalem was recaptured, the Jewish revolutionaries rededicated the temple, which had been profaned and vandalized. This 8-day rededication ceremony became known as Hannukah. After several more decades of struggle, the Maccabees pushed the Seleucids out of Judea and defeated the pro-Greek factions within their own country. This campaign has been seen as a prime example of resistance to forced assimilation, an idea that the Jews during the Roman occupation more than a century later would remember all too well. Another son of Mattathias, a man by the name of Simon Maccabee, became high priest and leader of a somewhat independent Judea in 141 BC, thus initiating the Hasmonean Dynasty, a line of hereditary priestly princes that lasted for about 100 years. However, a new power was burgeoning halfway across the Mediterranean: Rome. As the Roman Republic expanded, Judea was eventually pulled into Rome's geopolitical gravity. Back in the north, by 64 BC, after many years of decline due to being sandwiched between two great powers, the Persians to the east and the Romans to the west, the Seleucid Empire finally collapsed. Syria was now in the hands of the ever-expanding Roman Republic. As for Judea itself, this land, under the Hasmoneans, had been plagued by civil wars, which left the kingdom vulnerable to outside adversaries. In the territory of Idumea, what traditionally had been viewed as the land of Edom, named after Esau, a nobleman named Antipater supported a weaker Hasmonean claimant to the throne during one of these civil wars. This intervention was his means by which to maneuver his way to a powerful position once the civil war had ended. Luckily for him, his ambitions paid off, especially when the Roman conqueror of Syria, Pompey the Great, likewise intervened in this power struggle on the side of Antipater and occupied Jerusalem in 63 BC. Interestingly, the ever-curious and flamboyant Pompey, upon entering Jerusalem after the siege, not only went into the temple, but unapologetically made his way behind the veil in the Holy of Holies, which was an affront to many Jewish traditionalists. Judea thus came under the purview of the Roman governor of Syria and had to pay tribute and taxes to Rome. The Hasmoneans were still ruling Judea, at least on paper. However, Antipater and his sons Phasael and Herod were the actual authorities behind the throne, since they had the support of Rome. Moreover, they had the backing of Julius Caesar himself, who was becoming the new strongman of the Roman Republic. Herod eventually succeeded his father and became notorious for his paranoia and ruthlessness. He married the last Hasmonean princess and executed the rest of the dynasty. He likewise purged much of his own family, including wives and sons, so he could remain in power. Furthermore, his infamy extended to Christian circles much later, being known to them as the evil monarch who slaughtered many infants in search for the young Christ. However, he has also been lauded for his grand building projects, including the vast renovation of the Second Temple, with some even referring to it as Herod's Temple. The Wailing Wall that still exists today in Jerusalem is the last surviving remnant of the Second Temple, with this wall being one of the renovations in Herod's expansion project. Similarly, many of his other building projects still survive into our world. He fortified numerous areas within the province of Judea, including Jerusalem itself, which came in handy once the Jewish rebels had to defend the city against the attacking Romans sometime later. In a similar vein, the high, impregnable fortress of Masada stood as a lasting monument of Herod's ambitions, and likewise was used against the Romans during the Great Rebellion. He also erected entire cities, like the major port city of Caesarea, named after his patron, Julius Caesar. However, all of these great building projects came at a high price, with many of the inhabitants having to foot the bill through taxes and forced labor. Thus, in the end, Herod and his descendants ruled Judea, but only through the backing of Rome, which wielded the true authority, and Judea was made a client state of a republic turned empire. The Herodian dynasty ruled for about a century, eventually being replaced solely by Roman governors, as Judea lost more and more autonomy and independence. Next video, We will discuss the various religious and political factions within 1st century Judea, including the members of the Sanhedrin, the Zealots, and the Christians. Like, share, and subscribe. See you all in the next video.